The game is so fast now. The game is so fast. And back in my day, the offensive zones were smaller. They shrunk the neutral zone. They moved the blue lines closer to the middle of the ice. Does that make a difference, how you guys play defensively in today's game than maybe when you grew up and you had the smaller offensive zones? Saad?
I don't think too much. I think it's nicer as a forward more, where you can play with the puck more in the offensive zone. You have the more room, but defensively, yeah, it's the same thing for them. But you're working to get it back regardless of where you're at on the ice in situations like that. So I've never seen the old side of it like you, but
Taking a beating. It's the last time we do this, eh, Troy?
You get the opportunity late in the game, and the game's tied up. Face-offs in your own end of the ice. Jonathan, you get the tap to go take the draw. You got some different wingers out there, maybe in this situation. Do you have to take the time out to go talk to those guys, or is everybody kind of on the same page of what you need to do in your own end of the ice on critical face-offs? Tanner, you kind of touched on it, the importance of talking to the teammates. But how does that change anything when you get sent out there and maybe with different wingers than normally?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially if you're up a goal, it's a big game, you're protecting a lead. At all costs, you're trying to win the draw, get the puck out of the zone, and if you don't, and it's just, as we call it, prison rules, anything goes. I don't want to say those are Q's words, but they're pretty close. And so basically, you can just go to town, and you're pretty sure you're not going to get a penalty most of the time in the dying minutes or seconds of a game. So it's pretty much do what you got to do at all costs to get the puck out and kill the time. And I think early in your career, you definitely put a lot more pressure on yourself in those situations, and eventually you might be in a situation where you give up a goal and they tie the game and you end up losing, or just whatever sinking feeling comes from that. Eventually, I think you're like, okay, I've been through the worst, so what's the worst that can happen in this situation? So I think later in your career, you're just, you're used to it, and you go out there and you know what you got to do.
Tanner, have you ever had the Quenneville stare coming off the ice after losing a face-off defensively?
Yeah, unfortunately, a couple times.
You guys see it on TV, that intimidating stare. He's just kind of like, mustache goes up a little bit, eyebrows come down a little bit. We got some good questions here. As you get older, it'll come. So will this. Question is, other than skating speed, what qualities make for a good two-way forward, and what can a young skater do to work on those skills? Jonathan.
Well, I guess we always seem to go back to Host and what he does. I mean, he's one of the most talented players in the game, and he just always seems to have that little extra. And I think when you're going down the ice, you always seem to have more energy when you're rushing up the ice with the puck. But you rarely think that there's someone behind you skating way faster towards their own end. And a Host always seems to be that guy. So, again, maybe the two of us, at least when we play together, we relied on that a little bit too much. But it's something you definitely learn from that. You can sneak up and catch guys when they're not, they have no idea you're there. And I think a lot of times you can be dangerous when you cause turnovers and have a great transition game going back the other way. It's tough for defensemen to get up and defend against that. So again, yeah, it just literally comes down to competitiveness and seeing your opportunities and being strong on your stick.
In a lot of ways, and that's actually a really good question, you can work on your shot, you can work on your passing, you can work on your skating. How do you work in practice on the defensive side of it? Because there's not a lot of emphasis in your training and your skill and your teaching growing up on how to play defensively, other than what you do as far as a team system. Sauter, like, is there something defensively you can do, or is it more just like, as Jonathan said, competitiveness and a mindset?
Yeah, I think John, he touched upon it, and he's one of the best players at it with his competitiveness, and that's why he's always so good defensively as well as with the puck. But like you said, positioning, things like that, it's more just game feeling. You can't really prepare for it. something as a player growing up as a kid. It's not like Taser touched upon earlier too. When you're younger, we've always kind of been these players where you want to play both ends of the ice and be competitive and have the puck. And just that mentality, I think, more so than anything, helps you be that kind of player.
From Marissa in Lamont. Raise your hand. Way back
there you
there,
go.
thank you. This question is for Jonathan Toews. Last year, Duncan Keith said defensemen were the smartest players. As a two-way forward, what is your opinion on that?
Well, I don't know. Again, I think dunks can say a lot of things sometimes. I'm not sure if he even remembers saying that or what kind of mood he was in that day, but just, come up and play forward once in a while and see how it is. See if you can play 30 minutes a night. See how that goes.
Cassidy from Buffalo Grove, age 14. Thank you, Cassidy, for your question. Sauter, how does it feel coming back to the Hawks, and what's the big difference between 2 years ago on the Hawks and now?
Well, I think I was even just talking to Sharpie about it a little bit. We're coming back to the Hawks, but it's a completely different team. You come here last night, and really there's only a handful of guys that you see familiar faces, and you have those memories and things like that. So it's really a new team. It's a new group. Probably a lot younger than when I played here a couple years ago, but there's still a lot of talent. They still have that same mindset, things like that. So that hasn't changed. But yeah, it's a new group. So for me, it's exciting to meet new guys and to blend in with the group as quick as possible.
Tanner, you come from the collegiate system. You come and you're playing in Rockford, offensive player in the collegiate system. When you got down to Rockford, did you realize that there was not an opportunity, but you had to focus a little bit more on the all-around game if you were going to make it to the National Hockey League, because there is so many great offensive players?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you're at that stage, there's a lot of players that are similar skill set or similar offensive ability, and you want to be able to set yourself apart from that, and you want to be able to not just have that aspect of your game, and you want to be able to be able to play in all situations and be able to adjust your game to whatever situation might be, and just be able to adjust and be relied on and be as versatile as possible.
Cal Zimmerman from Pekin, Illinois. For Jonathan, what made you decide on number 19?
Well, I think I don't want to tell stories I've probably told dozens of times at conventions in the past, but I'll keep it short. It was just, it was my draft day, and everyone asks you leading up to those moments if you're nervous. You're like, nah, I'm fine. I'm excited for this. It's great. But all of a sudden, when it starts coming down, and when you kind of expect to hear your name, it does get pretty nerve-wracking. And sure enough, I'm pulling on the jersey, going through, the whole process. And I don't know if any of you guys were at the United Center this year. I mean, it's a pretty cool moment for a young player. So obviously the fans did a great job of showing up and putting on a show here in Chicago this year. But anyways, kind of doing some media, answering some questions after. I'm still pretty nervous and a little bit shaky. And someone asked me what number I'd like to wear, and I said, well, I'd like to wear number 9. And they're like, well, that one's taken. I'm like, by who? So another clueless moment with the Chicago greats that meant no disrespect, but that was my favorite number. And then my next favorite, I guess, in that sense, go down the list of the 19s, the Steve Yzermans, the Joe Sakic's, the Troy Murrays. It was a no-brainer. So there you go.
I give him $20 every time he mentions my name. For all of you guys, and we'll start with Tanner first, Shay from LaGrange Park. Who was the biggest influence in hockey growing up, and why?
Sorry, I didn't catch the beginning.
Who was the biggest influence in hockey growing up, and why?
Just for me personally? Or?
Yeah. Well, we could ask the guy to your left.
Oh, I think
two-way
just
forwards. Duncan Keith, you might have a point. I'm kidding.
yeah. I mean, well, being a Red Wings fan growing up, I mean, you're always watching watching those players
Oh,
and stuff.
he's
but
changed. Don't worry. It's all about
we've-
Chicago now.
We've converted a lot of Red Wing fans back from where I am, but I mean, just for myself though, I think it comes just from my parents and my dad. He was, a hockey player, and he's always having me work on things out behind our house and building ice rinks. Luckily, we have, winter 9 months of the year up there, so we have plenty of time on the ice. So he was always working with me and making sure I was working hard, and he's always wanted me to be the type of player who's not showboating too much. You score a goal, act like you've done it before, and just kind of have that respect for yourself and for other players, and just kind of learn from him like that, and just try to Mike's going out, but try to adjust my game and get better as I've gone on.
Sauter, your influence, and maybe if you can remember something, the best advice they ever gave you.
Well, for me, it's a lot to do with family as well. Obviously, all our parents sacrificed a lot, but also my brother was a huge part of my career. He's a couple years older. I always got to play with him and try to play up with the big boys. So he always helped me raise my level, whether it's getting in fights on the cul-de-sac with him or whatever it was. We were always competitive with each other, and we still are today. It's a little fun rivalry we have, but the biggest advice was probably I got associate yourself with the right people. So I was pretty fortunate to come into a great team and play with guys like Taser and other leaders in here in Chicago, where you get to hang out with them or go to dinner, things like that. Just be a sponge and learn from the greatest players in the game. So as a young guy, there's nothing better than to learn from the best, and it helps you mold into the right person and get on the right track.
Jonathan?
Well said, Todd. I guess not to reiterate too much what these two guys said. I mean, I think, in anybody's life, your parents and just kind of those figures in your life, whether it's coaches. I mean, for myself, I was lucky to have great coaches growing up too, that you learn all those little qualities, and hockey is almost kind of that vehicle to learn a lot of life lessons, a lot of good things. I'll never forget one of the things my coach in high school told me. I was playing at Shattuck St. Mary's. His name was Tom Ward, and I guess it's something he spread around the room, but he said, worry about being a good person first and a good hockey player second. Obviously I'm still working on that a little bit, but I still kept it in my mind a little bit. But yeah, it was one of those things that it was, that priority I think you should carry with yourself every day, and I think that's what you see a lot, especially in the locker room, especially in a game of hockey. If you're not a team guy, you're not a team player, you're not going to get too far. So I think the three of us have been lucky to be a part of a lot of great locker rooms.
Before I went to University of North Dakota, I played in the Alberta Junior Hockey League, and I had a coach back in the day. And the best advice that he gave to me when I was playing, I went out there in a big situation. He said, "Don't screw it up." I did. But it was a lesson learned. If you guys can sit here, and as some of the best two-way players in the league and on the Chicago Blackhawks, obviously, you look at these players coming in, and you've got some great offensive players coming in. A guy like Alex DeBrincat, who scored 65 goals this year, was named the Canadian Hockey League Player of the Year. As a winger, Sauter, young guys come in like that. What advice can you give them to be a better two-way player? Don't screw it up.
I don't think, it's there's not much to be said. I think Johnny touched upon it, where some players just have that mentality and mindset where, you can score goals growing up, but especially with Q, if you're not responsible in your own end, you're not going to get that ice time. And as hockey players, you want to play in all situations. So you look at guys on the Hawks and guys like Taser that play in all situations, whether it's power play, penalty kill, first minute of the game, last minute of the game, things like that. And as hockey players, that's all you want to do is help out your team and be out there on the ice in the big moments. So you learn fairly quickly. Lots of guys can score goals, but you got to be a well-rounded player to get out there. There's not many guys that can just do one end of the ice. So you'll find that out, and if you want to be in that moment, that's something you'll have to figure out quick.
Tanner, who's the toughest offensive player that you've faced so far in your career?
Oh, besides Kaner in practice, I would say.
But that, you know what? But that's a good learning lesson to play against Kaner in practice, because if you can shut him down, you can shut anybody down.
Yeah, so it's tough, especially when we gotta, they're working on power play and you're on penalty kill and you're trying to, get the puck away from them. You're just going in circles. It's, you gotta adjust. But there's been a lot of good players. I think even recently playing against Connor McDavid, you realize how skilled and good he is and how fast he is. So you got to be aware where he is on the ice and not let him get that step on you or that jump, because he'll fly right around you.
How do you make that adjustment when you know a guy like Connor McDavid, who could be the fastest player in the NHL, when he has the puck and the way that he plays the game? How do you make an adjustment as a defensive player to defend against a style like that?
Well, I think first off, you just got to put yourself in a good position. You don't want to be cheating on the offensive side of it, because, like I said, you'll be a step behind them right away, and then you're done. But you want to be in a good position right from the start, whether you're in your offensive zone or not, and then just make sure you're playing the position right. You want to angle him off good and just kind of force him to, run out of space or run right into your defenseman.
Two-way forward starts in the offensive zone, defensive zone as well. Jonathan, when you're in on the forecheck, and I know that if you guys have ever heard of F1, F2, F3, which is your first forward, your second forward, F3 would be the third forward. A lot of times offensively, the centerman is the F3, where he's got to cover up, kind of watch what's going on in the offensive zone. Maybe describe a little bit about how that happens and how that works for F3 to be in the good defensive positioning in case something goes wrong.
Do you want to get like the whiteboard out here? We can draw it up.
Sure.
I don't know. I guess again, like being a centerman, you're pretty much the rover. You're all over the place. So I think you're just kind of most of the time lending your support wherever you're needed. And if it's in the offensive zone, it's nice when you get your demon activated. If there's pucks coming up along the wall, they can activate, come down the wall instead of just letting them come out of the zone with it, to try and keep the pucks down offense. As a centerman, you're kind of always popping in behind in case they do get through that defenseman, and then you're not giving up an odd man rush. So just little situations like that. Again, it's you can draw it up on a board and go through all the X's and O's, but at the end of the day, we always kind of use the term, just play hockey. You just got to use your hockey sense, and it's all instinct and just kind of reacting of what you think's about to happen.
So Brandon, you're a winger. Tanner and Jonathan are centermen. And let's say they're the guys that are first in the offensive zone. You're the third guy high. Now you've got the responsibility as a centerman coming back, because you're going to be the first forward back in the zone defensively. How does that change mentally, and how important is it for you to know what you're supposed to do if you're that low guy there, as a centerman would be in the position where you normally are defensively in your own zone?
Yeah. When you're the first guy back on the forecheck, you assume his position, but I think as a student of the game, you learn everything you need to be, and then the centerman usually calls you off fairly quickly. So if I'm down low, Taser's coming back, he'll talk to me, switch us off, get back in the position you're comfortable with. But really, you just assume the position, take up good ice, and then get back to where you need to be.
You guys writing this down? Taking notes?
Tanner, how important is it to have a good goaltender to be a good defensive forward?
Oh, it obviously helps. Definitely with the plus minus and not getting scored on in those key situations, end of the game. But even talking too. I mean, if you got a goalie that's really good communicating or playing the puck and kind of being your eyes, if you're looking up the ice and not really aware of what's behind you, he'll be talking to you and telling you, there's a guy back door, guy right behind you, and kind of go from there.
Who was more vocal? Is it Scott Darling or Corey Crawford?
I don't know. That's a good question. Neither, really. I don't think they say much. Crow usually gets mad about something, and then a second later, you can see a smile through his cage. And it's the same thing when you hit him right in the face with a puck in practice. He's pissed off for about 0.5 seconds, and then a second later, he's laughing it off, and you think he's about to give you a shot or something. But I think goaltenders. I always joke. I'm just like, if they're asking questions about what's going on, I'm like, just stop the puck. Don't worry about it. And most of the time, that's what they do. I mean, I think Scotty and Crow are both very sociable guys. I think that, for a long time, it was always said that goalies are kind of the weird guys in the locker room, and they're always, which they were. But I wouldn't say that about those two guys because they were just one of the boys. But I think when you get on the ice, that they do have that one job, and they're just focused on that one thing, and so they're kind of just letting everybody do their job. Obviously, if guys are in front of them, they can't see pucks. I think that's when they'll start barking at you a little bit. But other than that, I think again, it probably just comes down to communicating with the D-men when the puck rims around. They got to stop and set it up, and that's their problem because we all know D-men are not that smart. I mean, let's be honest. So we won't worry about that as forwards.
As a forward, I'm with you. A couple years ago, Jonathan, did you play before they switched the puck handling areas for the goaltenders?
No.
You came in where the trapezoid was always there?
Yeah.
How do you think that changed the game from the way it was played prior to that, where the goaltenders now can't go into the corners defensively? Now that's a defenseman's responsibility going back. And how do you cover up for that? How do you defend that and back up the defenseman?
Well, I think it definitely helps if you're forechecking. It's harder I think that all goaltenders are such good puck handlers nowadays. So to restrict where they can handle the puck, I think is a big thing. And obviously they want to create more goals, more offense. So goalies can't just skate around with it. Obviously you can't hit them, or you can't do anything in that sense. To have that little zone behind the net, I think is a big thing, because if they miss the puck, then obviously it's coming around. The defenseman's usually going to get hit, and there's a good chance you're keeping the puck in the zone. So obviously coming back as a centerman in your own zone, it's a little bit tougher to defend in that sense.
Sauter, we're going to wrap this up real quickly here, but if you had some advice to somebody who's listening to the game, watching the game, some of you get it, some of you don't. Sauter, you look at, when you're watching the game, what would you say defensively that you should look for on TV that you could say, man, that guy did a nice defensive play? Because a lot of times the defensive plays kind of go unnoticed. You score a great goal, everybody gets excited. Something that you could pick up to the viewers watching the hockey game.
Well, I think when you watch a guy like House on the back check and strips the guy from the puck, things like that, those are big-time plays that are fun to watch. But mostly, like you said, defensive plays aren't too flashy. They go on a little bit unnoticed, but that's what helped teams play with the puck. So you see with the Hawks, especially with the puck possession they play with, there's a lot of guys that contribute to that. But the big plays, obviously, with Host, with stripping guys from the puck, taking it, making a play the other way, usually leads to breakdowns into goals the other way. So the moments before goals happen, you saw in some of the highlights with these guys breaking up plays and making passes to open guys to bury the puck. Those are huge throughout the game.
Defensively, a guy like Nicholas Hjalmarsson a couple years ago, Brent Sopel, some of the best shot blockers in the National Hockey League. As a forward, Tanner, how important is shot blocking to the defensive side of the game as a forward?
Yeah, I think it's big. Especially, whether it's, on a power play, it's obviously very important, but it's only going to help, especially if your, wingers might have that first crack at it, but if they, get around the winger, being a center, you're kind of floating around a little bit lower, so you want to be able to get in that position and block the shot so they don't have that chance to score, and it's only going to help your team defensively.
Unfortunately, that's about time we have here. I would like to thank Tanner Kero, Brandon Saad, Jonathan Toews. Thank you all for coming. Enjoy the rest of the fan convention.
Thanks, guys.
Enjoy the weekend.